We are live on Facebook for the Not Your Average Investor Show, Tuesday edition, interview edition. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez. With me, as always, the guy with the genius concepts, the guy that provides great value, the great co-host, the man they call GC, Gregg Cohen. Say hello, Gregg.
Wow, Pablo, you're on a roll today, brother. Thank you for that introduction. Great to be with you all.
Great to have you here, buddy. And really great to have the stars of the show today. I have never brought somebody on that we have spoken so much, that I feel like I've heard their story so many times in Jwb lore. They're part of the webinar. They're part of the story. You know, when Gregg and I were designing this show and we're talking about people's whys, the first people that they brought up were y'all. Welcome, Jim and Staci Taggart, to the Not Your Average Investor Show.
Wow.
Yeah, you really made us look like something special, and I'm hoping we can live up to an eighth of that or something. So,
you know,
thank you.
Yeah, no, happy to have you. It's funny because people show up to the show, they're like, oh man, I wish I can live up to that. And without fail, it lives up to it. So I'm sure that this is going to be an awesome conversation. Welcome everybody joining us today. We already got 31 people in here. We got Jake. Jake is switching it up with us. It's not a long yo, it's a yo, yo, yo. Jake, I respect the game. Lee, welcome. Nadim, welcome. Sean, welcome. Christine, welcome. We all know that if this is your first time joining us, this is an interactive show. We have Jim and Staci here. They have a ton of knowledge. They have a really, really interesting journey. And we want to answer questions based on their experience or the experience of Gregg Cohen. I'm just here as a pass-through, right? So we want you interacting with each other. The two ways to do it is, number one, pop open that chat. When you open the chat, it auto defaults to just speaking to panelists. That's that blue button you see above where you're typing. If you hit that, drop it down, put panelists and attendees. Now you're talking to everybody else. That is what Nadim's doing. That's what Lee's doing. That's what Jake is doing. Sean and Christine, y'all, when you spoke to me, you were only talking to panelists. So just go in there and change that up, and you can speak to each other and make a friend in here. There's a lot of collective knowledge in the folks that show up here every single week in our Not Your Average Investor community. So you want to be out there crowdsourcing the question. We may have a couple of answers, but there might be another one that will change the way that you think inside the chat. And I do my best to call that out. The other way is, if you want your question asked on the show, pop open the Q&A on the bottom right of the screen and populate it in there. And I will make sure that we do our best to get to it, have it answered on the show. You're going to become Not Your Average Investor Show famous when we make it into the micro content and you get into the Not Your Average Investor Show content stream. I'm going to say your name. So we want you participating there. And I ask that you use the Q&A because you're going to see a lot of people are going to be chatting on the left. That's the left of my screen. I don't know what side is on your screen. A lot of people are going to be chatting. So it moves really fast. So it's a way for me to keep track. Thank you so much. Last but not least, if you want a baseline guide about passive investing, we've worked real hard to put together a comprehensive guide for you at jwbpassiveguide.com. I'm going to put it in the chat. Go check it out. If you're listening to this in your ear on the podcast, go check that out, jwbpassiveguide.com. And without further ado, Jim and Staci, I say that y'all are legendary around JWB because JWB always starts off, right? The reason why you invest in rental properties is because of your why. And they always get down to it. And you are the reigning title holders of the coolest. So I would love to hear from you what your original why was and how that is evolving right now in present time.
So, do you want me to tell back up to when originally the concept of our why came by? We were at a family reunion. We saw a paddle boat pull up in the Ohio River. People got off and went into town and saw to these little shops and restaurants and everything. It looked really fun. And I said to Jim, wouldn't that be cool if we could do something like that? I said, I'm not sure that I'd want to be on a big paddle boat, but it would be really cool to be able to go down the rivers in the United States and do something like that. And I researched it a little bit and found out that there was a event, or if you will, that's called the Great American Loop. And so we investigated that further and found out that you had to have usually a trawler, which is a bigger type boat. And it could be, I think what size we were looking at, 42
foot. roughly.
And it had to be able to access locks and be able to go into bridges, to be able to go up the eastern seaboard, through the Erie, down through Chicago, and down. We wouldn't go down the very much of the Mississippi. It was like through the Tenn-Tom River and then down to the Gulf, and you kind of make this big loop. So we started further investigating what that would take to do that. And it was the boat, and it was a lot of money, and the ability to be able to, obviously be retired and have money come in and do that. So we were trying to think of ways that we could accomplish that. And it so happened that we had just been to Fortune Builders, had learned a little bit about passive investing. And then that's kind of when we hooked up with JWB. We're referred to them, and I'll let you tell more from there, since I've already talked.
Oh, you're doing well. Keep going.
Real quick. Was it a, hey, let's do this? Well, what if we do it like this? What if we do it like that? Sounds like a real escalating kind of commitment thing. Were you both on board immediately, or did it take a little bit of negotiation that you were
no,
really
we absolutely both fell in love with it. And like I said, we actually went down to Miami 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, and got certified as trawler captains. Spent a week in Key Biscayne on the water, running the trawler. I'd say probably 98% of the time. About the last 2%, the captain took over if there was a situation that we couldn't deal with. But for the most part, yeah, we drove the boat. We did it for 4 days, staying on the boat night and day, and learned a whole lot. Of course, there's a lot more to learn, especially when it comes to the financial part of it. We found out. But we were both actually really on top of it together. Let's do this thing and enjoy it. So.
But we knew that there was going to be money involved in that, and how much we would need to be able to do that on a monthly basis. And again, that's kind of where JWB comes into play and helping us figure out how much that might be.
Yeah, and that's where Gregg comes up with what do we want to do with that? How we want to budget it, and he came up with a plan for us, and that's where it all started.
Greg, when you had, tell us about your reaction.
Oh, well, I just love this story. So for my team, we get to help people buy houses, but just the simple act of buying a house doesn't excite people, right? It's beyond what you're trying to accomplish. And when clients let us in to understand what they're really hoping to accomplish, and we get to be a part of their story, that's what really fires us up. So when I heard that Jim and Staci wanted to do the Great American Loop, I Googled it. I looked it up. I was like, oh my goodness, this is like the perfect representation of what investing in rental properties can do for somebody, right? And I was like, wow, what a cool concept. I didn't know that you guys actually did all of the work to become trawler captains and all that good stuff. I mean, this is a lifestyle commitment that you guys are making there. But I remember, wasn't it about a 6 to 9 month time frame to complete the Great American Loop? Am I remembering that correctly?
I mean, some people you can do, however, there's people that have done it in a shorter time. They've done it on different vehicles or boats types. Somebody's even done it on a jet ski, but yeah. But I think it's all basically how you want to experience it. The idea is to be up north in the summer months, obviously, and down south in the winter. So it's kind of like some people will start it and stop it and then start it again and kind of moor their boat somewhere, or not really moor it, but dock it and put it in storage or something and come back to it. So it really is all depending on how, you want to do it. And I think at the time we haven't really decided how we would do it. Would we do it in a full year, or would we, do it over a course of years?
And I remember going through the planning process too, again, to do something like that, or some similar type of a why for anybody out there who's listening, right? There's a lot that had to go into it. We had to understand the amount of passive monthly cash flow that had to come. And then we broke that down into a number of rental properties that we needed to acquire. And I believe that was all rooted in, wasn't it? Maybe Jim, were you going to take a sabbatical from work? Staci, were you going to leave your job? Was that a part of it? Is that how we figured out the goal so that we could replace that income?
It was basically, we just wanted that amount of, it was when we retire, which we're hoping to retire sooner than later. But it was hopefully to have that income coming in that was, I don't want to say for sure, but very expected, because we have a lot of money tied up in the market, in the IRAs and 401ks, and those can be great one day and not so great the other day, and if real estate, if this is COVID has proven anything, it's been that thankfully, this is kind of, the worst of times with regard to some of the things that have gone on economically. But for us, thankfully with JWB and some of our rentals, we've been very fortunate that all that money's come through. It didn't affect our rentals really. And so that says to me that real estate, as opposed to other investment vehicles, is a little bit more reliable. And so I think we wanted that money that we talked about for the loop on that budget. This was our budget that we wanted to be able to live on it. We wanted to be able to have that money come from real estate. We didn't want it to come from another source.
That's perfect segue. So you were planning this trip, you wanted a reliable source for it via real estate. You decided that was the mechanism. Now you went through the mechanism. We're going to talk about how you built that up, but you realized maybe this trip isn't for you because you saw some unforeseen costs, and now you are changing your plan. I don't know if you are fully decided what's next, but if you are, let us know. But can you kind of tell me how the consistency of it, the fact that you made the consistent cash flow, does that play into your options versus if you would have been relying on more like of a marketplace, something like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, definitely. It's like, in order to do something like the loop or even a, RV sort of trip, you have to be able to have a reliable amount of money coming in and to budget how your gas, your fuel, and all that sort of thing. So, I mean, that really plays into a lot of the things of why we wanted to do the real estate. I don't know if that answered the question. I feel like I kind of veered off, but.
No, that's you're right on point there. You're right on point with what I was asking is the idea that now you're able to, now that before the why drove you to build this consistency, but now the consistency allows you to change plans regardless of the loop or not.
Exactly. Because I mean, I think when we talk about retirement, I can switch my mind. It's weekly. About where we're going to live, what we're going to do. Next month, we're going to Florida to look at a 55 plus community. So, that month it might be Florida. And then I say, oh, don't leave Texas. But so it kind of depends on the mood, but the ability to have something like this allows you to have flexibility. I always used to think, okay, when you retire, this is what you have to do. You have to identify what you're going to do and you're going to do it. And that's it. Well, I don't see retirement being that way. I see it as being flexible and being able to have the means to be flexible to do what you may try something for a while and it doesn't suit you. So there you go. Now you can move into a different arena.
And that's kind of us together. That's how we approach everything. I mean, we could switch like next week, do something different. A week later, do something again different. We work that way together. Been together for so long. We read each other's minds. So
that is true. Yeah. We've known each other since third grade and have been going out since I was 15. You were 16 or 17. Yeah.
Third grade. Wow. You guys have my wife and I beat. We knew each other in high school. You lapped us there.
He was a brat though. I didn't hook up with him until later. So
gotta earn it. So actually, speaking of gotta earn it, right? So okay, so let's go into your investing journey, right? So at first you had this why. The why will inevitably lead to consistent cash flow. How did you start? Can you tell us about your investing story and how you decided that real estate was going to be the mechanism, and then how you got started and where you went from there?
You want to talk about initially about the business that we bought and that? Yeah.
Oh, the commercial building?
Yeah. Well, even before our goal of this, we had a little bit of a bite into the real estate arena, if you will, and purchasing a commercial building with another partner of ours. It was a very old building, a 1800s, early 1900s, not a very profitable thing, kind of a money pit. So we may have had a little bit of a bad taste in our mouth. And I think a little bit of fear of investing more into real estate. And so then when we learned about JWB, and we went and got the process of writing our goals down, how much we needed to get for houses to be able to generate the cash flow that we wanted. It just, the whole process of that kind of makes you feel a little bit more confident, I think, in investing. So then once there was a plan established, okay, you need to do this, and this is how many houses. I think the first year we may have established maybe a few houses to purchase, and so many, well, I think we ended up buying
5 of them?
might have been 5 the first year or something. I mean, they went 3 at right, bam, bam, bam. And that was nice because the taxes all were off the same thing. And then later we bought the other ones, and then slowly the other ones had trickled. So it just really kind of evolved that way. And like I said, like potato chips, once we started, it was kind of like, oh, let's get another one. Let's get another one. And it's been great. And the passive real estate investment has been great, because that is not my favorite part of real estate, is dealing with the renters, the tenants. So it made it much more palatable that way.
That's surprising, Staci, that you didn't want to deal with the tenants. I've never heard that before. No, of course, that's what everybody thinks. So that's really wonderful. What's really interesting is I didn't know that you had a poor experience in real estate even before this. So if I'm thinking of kind of where you're at mentally before you came to know JWB and before we built that plan, you're really coming from a place of, you know, a negative experience. Then you started to educate yourself through Fortune Builders, which is incredible. But then you got introduced to us, and the concept of buying maybe 5 rental properties in the first year in a market that you didn't know in Jacksonville with people that you didn't know. That's pretty scary, especially for somebody who's maybe coming from a negative experience. So, and there's a lot of folks that are listening to this right now saying, well, how could I be comfortable investing thousands of miles away with a team that I don't know yet? So what were some of the things that helped you convince yourself that it was worth taking that leap of faith?
We'll talk about the trip.
Well, I think with JWB, when we first went down Mitchell and having GC here jump in a van and take us to the houses that we had purchased. So of course, we met with you online and over the phone and discussed what we want to do, our goals. And then once we come and visit your office and all the people you have, it was right there, told us we're doing the right thing. You got a great company, you got the management in place, and it's has been great ever since. So that's kind of where we're sitting on that. Yeah. And
the culture of the company with regard to, I mean, one thing that struck me is everybody goes and eats lunch, you know, together. And the other thing is, I think you had in place the thing where you try to help your employees establish goals and then reach those goals through counseling and help from your people inside. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's just not a company that's out to make some money. That's a company that's out to do the right thing for both their employees and their customers, so, and their renters. So I can only assume that translates out to the tenants, that they see that same side that we see.
Well, thank you guys for saying that. You're talking about the Dream Manager program, which a lot of people don't know about, but it's amazing that after being clients for 5 years, that there are a couple of things that stick out to you guys more than anything else, right? We've been able to deliver a lot of positive cash flow to you, but when we ask you, you know, what are some of the things that separated us? It's something like the Dream Manager program, which for JWB, all of our teammates here have an opportunity to be a part of the Dream Manager program, which basically is built off of a book called The Dream Manager that I read, I don't know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, whenever it was. And it was about this company that was like a janitorial company who was having a culture problem. And they told the story of through this company, how they were able to improve their retention, improve their company through basically creating this program where teammates were able to work on whatever goals they had, whether they were in line with the company or not. And the company was going to support them, even to the point where if their goals for that person, that individual, led them to go and find a different opportunity to leave that company, the company was still going to support them and do that. So like for JWB, some of our teammates have goals to buy a house, which we can help them with our network. And some have goals to pay off credit cards or to save a certain amount of money so they can go and take a trip. We have one teammate who was trying to write a book. And so through our connections in the community, we were able to connect them with an author who was a really well-known author here to be able to help them actually write their their book. And it's one of the things that we just really believe, if you help enough other people get what they want, then you're going to get what you want as well. And, that's from Zig Ziglar. I stole that one, but that's really how we operate. And it's really cool that we attract clients just like you who want to work with people like that too. I mean, because when we think about our why, it's, changing people's lives is why we do what we do. It's the same thing with your why, right? You have something that's well beyond just earning income from your rental properties, right? It's the experiences that you get to create from it. So I find that when companies and clients share a higher purpose than just making money, usually it's a great fit and you can really kind of have a lot more fun than just simply performing a service or a product for somebody. You know what I mean?
Agreed. Yeah.
Gregg, just when I thought I couldn't possibly have more of a man crush on what JWB is doing, you break out the Dream Manager program that I hadn't heard in a full year of singing your praises. So little story behind the scenes here. I was running with Gregg this morning and we're talking about his book and he's like, man, I have this I don't feel right writing a book. Like, I don't feel like I have enough to give. I'm like, Gregg, like the stuff that JWB has done is so transformative that the world needs to know about this, right? I'm always telling him that he's the Richard Branson of real estate, but neither here nor there. Jim and Staci, you guys are the star of the show. Talk to me about, oh, well, first of all, Lee Bishop has a great question here. Lee asks, Staci and Jim, have anyone else in your families done real estate investing before you joined Fortune Builders?
Yes. Matter of fact, my parents my dad was a contractor. And at the time he was partners with his dad. Just didn't work out very well. They're doing custom homes. He broke off on his own. This is back in the 60s. Was doing custom homes on his own and realized that he wasn't making money for himself. He was just building for either the clients, but he actually broke out and started building duplexes. And then for an investor up there. And then what he did after that was he decided, hey, this is good for myself. So he started building duplexes for himself and then bought into the apartments. And I think he had like 26 apartment buildings and I think like 18 duplexes. So I saw that growing up, but I was a young kid who knew everything and didn't really catch on at such a young age.
We're slow learners.
Right.
I actually helped. We used to go around and collect coins out of the laundromat part of the apartments, and neither of us, with his dad having all those apartments, you'd think it'd go cha-ching, this is something to do. No, and he didn't really encourage us, which is kind of odd. And my mom was fortunate enough to have inherited a family farm and a half of a family farm. And so she rented those out as rental properties and took the cash flow off of those. And then when she passed, my brothers and I got portions of the, inheritance. And before she passed, though, when she sold the half of the farm that was half hers, she actually invested in kind of like VRBOs down here on the Texas coast and did rentals there. So yeah, we started kind of getting a little bit more, like I said, we're slow learners. It took a while, but yeah. So after some of that, I don't know why we didn't.
Well, it's being scared. And I think
it was a lot being
like
scared.
Gregg, when we were talking, purchasing one from JWB, and then he talked us into buying three, and then, oh my gosh, 3. But once we did that, it became so easy.
It was less fearful.
Yes.
It's that step of doing it. And,
I scare some people when I talk to them about that. And I wouldn't do it if I didn't believe it was the right thing for most people. Now, for everybody who's listening, we love working with clients who purchase one. But we also are really forward with you that if you want this to be a consistent asset class, you got to have 3. You got to have diversification of your portfolio, because otherwise, if you only have one rental property, newsflash, at some point, something bad is going to happen to that property, whether somebody moves out or there's a maintenance expense or whatever. And if that's the case, it's going to be like this. And so, in our conversations, Jim and Staci, when we were talking about what type of consistency is needed to get to the Great American Loop, I'm like, guys, I can't just sell you one. Like, if we're really trying to get to the Great American Loop, right? Like, this needs to be performing for years and years and years and years and years consistently in order to give you guys the confidence to go. So yeah, I'm not surprised. I scare a lot of people that way, but it's the way the numbers work, and It's the truth.
Yeah, no, but it's a good thing because not only does it saves you kind of the headache when you're doing all that paperwork kind of at once, because you've already got it all collected.
Right.
It makes it easier process on the buyer too, I think. I mean, from my perspective.
Yeah. Tell people a little bit about what the loan process is like, and then, the decision to buy multiple properties at one time versus stringing them out across the year. I know we were talking a little about it before, but share with people your ideas on why that makes sense.
So for us, because he has a business and we have like sort of like other little business things around, there's always, oh, I need your, Schedule K from this business and your Schedule K, and I need your this from this business. And it becomes a lot of data collection. So for me, if you can they want your most recent taxes, they want your last pay stubs, they want these tax filings from any businesses that you have. And then in some cases, they want your most recent profit and loss within, that month or whatever. So if I was able to do all those things like at the same time or nearly the same time, it wasn't as much of a struggle because I had it all ready in kind of a little package. And then when the new loan came up, I just sent the stuff I had already collected basically. So it made it a lot easier to do. And it is nicer to do if you can do it like once you're because usually we file extensions. So it's kind of like, oh, if I can do it like right after I get my taxes done, that's great. Or, that sort of thing. But it is nicer to buy in several at once because of that. I think that process.
And nobody really thinks about that, but there's that huge just experience of, you'll have a more positive experience if you can organize multiple purchases at one time with the lending process. But this really goes back to the planning process. That's why when we are going to be planning with potential clients, we're planning about the first year, right? The first initial purchases, whether that is 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever number, we're planning that, but then we're planning future years. And if we're thinking next year and 2 years and 3 years, and we know that there's going to be maybe a plan to purchase 3 properties over the next 2 years or 3 years, we're going to look to see if we can make this a better experience for you that you can buy all of them at one time. Maybe it's sooner, maybe it's a little bit later so you can combine it if there's a big bonus that's coming in with work. But through that planning process, we're able to maximize it. And then, of course, there's some incentives to do that too. There's a tenant placement incentive that we credit up to. We credit $500 when you purchase 3 at one time. So there's some of those incentives. There's the incentive that you guys have reached, but when you get to 5 properties, you drop the management fees from 10% each month to 9%. So there's some of those built-in advantages as well. But one other thing that I wanted to mention that I know a lot of people aren't aware of, most people feel that if they are able to get one loan on a rental property, that it would be harder for them to get qualified to buy 2 at one time or 3 at one time. I'll put you guys on the spot, Jim and Staci. Do you know why it's actually easier for you to be able to get qualified for 3 properties many times versus 1?
I do not. I just know it was.
It works. And if it works, we don't have to understand it exactly why. But for most people, when they go in, like, let's say that you guys wanted to go and buy 2 primary residences right now, right? It would be harder to do that because in a primary residence, you are not earning what?
You're not earning cash flow. You're not earning money.
Yeah, you're not earning rent to offset the debt. But when you actually invest in turnkey rental properties, like here in Jacksonville, where there's positive cash flow, like Jim and Staci, every time the bank looks at potentially making a loan to you, they're looking at the income that is coming in from the rents, and then they're looking at the payment, the debt service that will be required to service that. And you have more income than debt service. That's what we call positive cash flow. So that's a beautiful thing. And so the lenders that we work with in our network, and not every lender can do this, but our lenders do, of course, they're able to capture the rental income coming in. They're able to show the lender that this offsets the debt. And that's how you're able to buy 3 from getting qualified perspective as easily as you are to buy 1.
Makes sense.
So there you go.
Paul here, Paul texted us directly because he's speaking only to panelists. I just told him to change the panelists and attendees, but he put it really well. He puts, because the portion of your rental income counts towards the I in your DTI.
There you go. There you go. Well, yes, there you go. 100%. I was just making sure I got that right.
Now you know, Paul, he's thorough. So I want to talk about the fact, Jim and Staci, y'all invest in multiple types of real estate these days, and I want to get there. But Sean Dackery has a quick question for you, Gregg. Does JWB do multi-unit, since you're talking about buying more than one thing?
So we do not. We do not have duplexes and triplexes and quads. That's not to say we don't love that idea, though. It's just in Jacksonville, the housing stock, there's not a lot of duplexes and tris and quads in the neighborhoods that we want to put you in. So if there were, we would be all over it. But you have to go to the neighborhoods that don't meet our standard, the ones that have higher crime, higher maintenance, higher vacancies, higher turnovers. And so we're not willing to do that. But I will share with you that what a lot of our clients do is, if they are looking for some of those same benefits for multifamily properties, but they want to be in the right neighborhoods in a growth market like Jacksonville, they'll look to townhomes. And so townhomes are very similar to multifamily properties. And there are a lot of townhomes in the neighborhoods that we operate in. And so that might be an option for you.
All right. So Jim and Staci, y'all got a bunch of houses with JWB, but you have other stuff. Can you tell us about the other pieces of your portfolio? You have the commercial building that you said is kind of a loss leader for you, and a downtown that might renovate. What else have y'all invested in?
Well, we're originally from South Dakota. I don't know if that was brought up or not, and we live in Texas. But when we retire, we want to be able to either travel from Texas back to South Dakota during the summers, enjoy the winters either in Texas
or Florida.
So we decided to buy a townhome up there in South Dakota. What, about 4 years ago, I think?
Yeah,
probably 4 years ago. And it was mainly for us to go up there in the summers and enjoy. Well, we turned that into one of the, I guess, a VRBO. And it was a pretty easy process, as JW did for us. We found out it was pretty simple, and Staci had all the paperwork, and we purchased the one townhome up there. And then within probably a few months later, we bought another one. And then Staci got this crazy idea. She just started calling me and saying, "I'm making an offer on houses." I'm like, "What?" Without me looking at them. And see, she would just, "Hey, I'm going to put an offer on this house." And so far we purchased 3 houses up in South Dakota. It's one of our portfolios.
On the second note, so the first one was kind of VRBO, and then we switched it to a short-term rental, which is basically a month or more sort of deal.
Right.
And the second property, when we initially bought that one, we decided to do it as a long-term rental. And then that one ended up going short after the people moved out within a year. And then the third, I've got so many people wanting to rent these because I'm getting people like traveling nurses, which I've advertised on a thing called Furnish Finders for traveling nurses. I've gotten people that my realtor up there referred to me that needed a place to stay while their house was being built or their house was being purchased. And people that are working contract, they're building a new Amazon up there, and there's contract workers. So it filled that void. Now, granted, these are furnished rentals, so there's a little bit more cost involved, and probably getting the money out of them, will take a little bit longer. But typically, you can charge a bit of more money, per month than the market would on a regular rental up there. And then as far as other real estate investments, we've also invested in a real estate investment fund that's here in Texas. It seemed to do really well right at the get-go, but kind of now the interest rates are so low, it's a little bit more challenging. So I guess, and then we of course have some vacant land. So we have a little bit of all different types of real estate now.
And also we're in a partnership with another friend of mine where we buy apartments. And so far we've gotten 3. We've got one in San Antonio, Austin apartment complex, and in San Marcos, not really apartments, a single family, but in a commercial setting. We turn them from offices into single rentals for the college area. And we got 3 of those.
But those are not our personal ones.
Not
those
personal.
are part of something we're in. So.
Wow. it seems like you guys have explored how to invest passively in real estate to a degree that I haven't seen very often. Congratulations, guys. I think it'd be really cool for somebody who has been in that position and has put their money on the line in so many different ways to just give a little bit of perspective on maybe what you like the most about a certain investment, or maybe what a drawback is for another certain investment. Could you do a little bit of comparing and contrasting between a few of those?
I can tell you right off the bat, tenant management is one that is not my favorite. Even with these short-term rentals, it's hard for me to take the emotion out of this. And that's why I think something like JWB is very good to have, because I don't have to deal with, I tend to get emotional. If people mess up my place, I tend to get a little upset about that. And if they withhold their rent, I don't like that either. And so I get emotional instead of trying to look at a business. So that is definitely, I think, one of the downsides of having something like that you're not you're actively managing instead of passively.
Mm-hmm. That's like an in-betweener. It's passive, but actively managing. And that's an in-betweener there.
And it's not a lot of, I mean, it's every, usually 3 months or something, I have to get a new person in there, whatever, and get the leases and everything, but it's still something is not my favorite. Or I guess like when we go and do those places, like Jim and I, and especially Jim, like he pretty much renovated the house, the single family house that we bought up there. So it's a lot of work. And even though I know like on our properties in Florida, we could probably, if we were there, save some money by doing it ourselves. It's something that is nice not have to do, because it's a lot of work doing it, even if you can do it yourself, if you're skilled at doing that.
So I'm guessing you kind of like comparing it to JWB, you probably knew that it was going to be some additional work and some additional ongoing management. So I would imagine you looked at that and you said, well, there's got to be maybe a higher potential return here. Is that what you were thinking?
Yes. And the fact that, I mean, everybody likes real estate because you're having somebody else pay for your asset. So eventually having that place paid off, or we could go stay there. I mean, that's awesome, and it was in a location and we were actually, contemplating that in Florida. What if we see a house that we like there and we want to buy it now and lease it out until we're ready to actually move there? Then they'll have part of the property paid off by the time we're ready to go.
Yeah. You guys are all in on all the 5 profit centers. You know how it works there. When you know that you're going, especially if you're going to potentially move somewhere or spend 6 months a year there, the sooner you can own it and then have the residents start to pay down the loan for you, get to benefit from all 5 of those profit centers. Makes a lot of sense.
This is awesome. So getting great participation from the chat. Thank you, everybody that's commenting. Sean Fletcher writes, "Go Yotes." I'm assuming that's some kind of South Dakota thing.
Oh, yeah. Coyotes.
Oh, Yotes. Oh,
really in South Dakota.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he says, "Go Yotes." There's another Sean that isn't Fletcher. He says, "Those are my same streams of income, and it is a lot of work." But he says you can actually list for free on Facebook. I don't know if y'all knew that. Maybe that's a nice tip to throw in.
I have listed it on a few of the traveling nurse places on there as well, but I do get a really good response with that furnish finders that I've been using as well.
Awesome. Let's enter. I want to get into your journey philosophically of something you shared with me on our onboarding call, and that's the idea that you read Robert Kiyosaki, you're all in on leverage. At a certain point, you started listening to Dave Ramsey, and what he espouses is essentially debt is the devil, right? And then you came back around. Can you talk me through what got you listening to Kiyosaki, what changed your mind, and then what changed your mind back?
I don't remember originally how we got reading Robert Kiyosaki.
Yeah, I don't remember actually either. I know we went to a conference in Dallas, to one of his conferences up there that you found. And
I think we had already read the book, but we went there, and interestingly enough, his big thing is OPM, and Jim saw somebody he knew up there that actually owed him money. So he goes, "Oh, I guess you're really getting the concept of OPM."
Other people's money.
I caught him red-handed. So.
Oh, yeah?
He was smart. He was using OPM.
Yes,
Interest-free, might I add. But Yeah, so I think we both got into that. We were trying to, and we were also doing some where we were trying to learn about options tradings right around the same time. So we were trying to, get interested.
Investigating everything.
Yeah, really investigate. And again, I think it's that fear factor. We just couldn't, that is the thing. You just can't make that one step over, And then we were transitioning, we were going to our church, and they had the class by Dave Ramsey that you could take, and it was the envelope system. And so, well, let's do this. Let's get our budget in order, and we'll do this and that sort of thing. And then it was kind of like pay everything in cash. And so we went to that mindset instead of leveraging money. And I think we took good pieces out of that, but then eventually made our way back to the leveraging your money instead of, spending everything on cash. I mean, good debt and bad debt. That's what I think we kind of learned out of, even Dave Ramsey. There's bad debt, and you don't want to, he thinks, I guess all debt is bad, but to learn that, your primary residence is not an asset. It's, it's a liability because you're not making money on it unless you're renting out a room. But so anyway, I guess that's kind of how our mindsets have transitioned. And like Jim said, we kind of changed our mind.
I'm curious where you were in the evolution here, because as I look at your purchases, they were all financed. So where were you in the evolution? Were you in the financing is good part of the evolution there, or was it a divergence from maybe what you were thinking at that point?
We are transitioning back to the Kiyosaki leveraging your money situation there. So, and we still have, people that we know that buy real estate cash out, and that's what they want to buy it with cash, and that's what they do. But when I look at that, it's like you could be buying more of them and leveraging that initial dollar amount and getting more out of it. So yeah, by the time we were at JWB, we had already transitioned over.
Right. Well, we learned some, one of my business partners with the first commercial building we bought, that's a money pit. We had built a house here in Texas, and I built it myself, and we had a lot of equity in it. And when we decided to sell, we wanted to move, we made quite a bit of money on it. Well, I went ahead and bought down the lot, which is $100,000, and took all the money on that. It was about $250,000, and stuck it into the loan. So I had all that paid off. And talking to my partner later on, a year or two later, he said, well, what'd you do with the money? I said, well, I stuck it on the lot and paid down the house. He's like, you're an idiot. I'm like, well, what are you talking about? He goes, you had money to leverage. You could have used that. So I guess hindsight's 2020. Well, then we end up selling that house, and that's when we came to you all. We had money, and we put down other houses and property and used that leverage. And ever since then, that's our mindset, I guess. Yeah.
So if I'm thinking like many in the audience right now, I've heard you start off this conversation talk about how consistency is really what drove you to investing in single family rental properties with JWB. But now we're talking about actually taking out debt, which means that you have a payment to make every single month. Can you share with everybody how you were able to marry both of those two things, where it made sense to take out debt and also accomplish the goal of consistency?
Oh, that's a good question, and difficult maybe to answer. I guess, the properties that we bought are good properties in that I feel we paid a good price for them, and we're getting some good cash flow out of them. So it made it easier to buy them and know that consistently, okay, we can do it. We've seen it with this one, we can do it and do it with the next one. And I don't know, can you add to that? Don't know that I'm answering that question exactly.
I think it's a great answer.
Real estate and cash flows, and that's all I need to know.
Well, I think it's a muscle that you exercise as well, because I remember the first time I took out a loan on a rental property, I was scared, right? I didn't know if the numbers were actually going to work. And now after doing it for 15 years, it's a natural response now. If I see an interest rate like today, and you can buy properties with like a 4% interest rate on an investment property, for me, I look at that and I'm like, okay, that is smart debt, especially if it pays for itself every single month. But when I look at your portfolio, I would imagine, Staci, it's just like you mentioned, right? you saw it work for a few properties right off the bat. You saw how, even though, and let's be honest, even though negative things have happened with your portfolio over time, you saw how some properties were overperforming at that point.
Mhm.
And then you had maybe one or two that had an issue at that moment,
Right.
but that consistency was still able to be accomplished. And I just think it's a learned skill. Like, learning how to use debt effectively is a learned skill. And if you can use it effectively, that's where you can really grow. You can grow your wealth. You can speed up your timeline to get to that financial freedom that you're looking for, whatever goal you want. It's like this incredible tool that you have to learn how to use. And you also have to have experience with it working before you really kind of like jump to that level like you guys are at, where you have, 8 properties with JWB. You have all these other passive investments all across the world, all across the country here. You don't get there unless you know what you're doing and you have a lot of experience with it, would be my guess.
A little bit of luck. A lot of smart people around us.
Yeah, it's not us, it's our
Yeah.
surrounding people.
It's funny. It's funny that you just said those two things. I've been in this. I don't know if y'all know who Jim Collins is, right? But he is this author. He's kind of like the Peter Drucker of this generation. He's the like what makes a great business author of this generation that's been putting out books from good to great and built to last and all these different things. It's actually one of the reasons when Gregg talks about the flywheel, that's a concept from one of their books. And he's got this like seminal work that he's put out called Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0, where he's amassed all of his work and he's put it into this one volume that I just poured through. And he talks about two concepts. Number one of the things that he added that didn't have his original works is the importance of people in your life, and how that's like the first chapter that he talks about. And it's the people that you bring in. And then the other thing he talks about is called ROL, return on luck, right? So there is always luck that factors into great decisions. But if you're surrounded by great people and you're action takers and you're flexing this muscle and you're doing these things, that's when you have the propensity to have this return on luck like that we're experiencing. I thought it was a interesting take on it all. So let's get into a couple of the questions here. So Lee Bishop asks, so you two did the conventional loan. How much did you have to put down? Were the deals similar for all of them? I guess this is when you were talking about the rest of your portfolio. Did you have conventional financing for JWB? Yeah. Gregg said that you had. Your other properties, the VRBO properties, did you go conventional financing again?
Yes.
And was it kind of the same range of put down, 20 to 25%, something like that?
Yeah, pretty much 25% on almost.
Yeah, I think there was maybe one that we put 30 on. I don't know what was happening at the time, but yeah, anywhere from 20 to 30% down usually.
Okay. All right. Jim McMichael has a question here, and maybe y'all can answer it. Curious on taking a loan for multiple properties at once. Is that one loan for all properties put together, or do you get separate loans on each property?
No, separate loans on each property. And I thought of that at one point. I said, well, gee, why can't we put all these together? But then if something happened, all those houses would be tied to that one loan. So I think I like Gregg was mentioning, having it kind of as a neutralization. If one thing goes bad on one, it neutralizes out the others. And if they're all on the same one, it's kind of, I think, not very good. So yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing, your typical conventional product through Fannie Mae won't allow you to put multiple properties on one loan as well. You would have to go to a more of a portfolio type of a loan. And Fannie Mae rates are those 4% interest rates that we talk about, the best terms. So generally speaking, you're going to want to do just what Jim and Staci did.
All right. Sounds good. Now, Chris Stokes has a question. Gregg, I think this might be just for you. I don't know if y'all have bought anything under non-recourse loans, but she says, I currently have 3 rental properties with JWB and would love to get another. However, non-recourse loans require 50% down. Is there a way around that?
No, not really. And, 50% down is there because this is a different type of loan. It's really not anywhere related to what you would be able to do on the conventional financing route. The big difference is because non-recourse what it means is that the bank doesn't have recourse against you personally if you don't make the payments. And so there's this huge element of risk that a bank takes on. So if you don't make the payments and it's a non-recourse loan, they would take the house back, but they would not damage your credit for the next 7 years. Whereas for these normal conventional loans, the bank has a lot of it mitigates a lot of their risk to know that not only would they take the house back, but they would make sure that your credit would be damaged, which would incentivize you to make the payments more on time. So it's a different thing. In order for a lender to take on the additional risk of a non-recourse loan, they're going to want to make sure that they have much more of an equity spread in the property that decreases their risk in the event that they would have to take the property back from you, that they can still make money on it. So there's not much that can be done there.
All right. Jim and Staci, this has been great. I'm gonna ask you just kind of one final question, and to contextualize everything you're doing, right? Like, now you have this amazing experience, you have this wide portfolio, you got these big plans. You're obviously awesome adventurers, right? What if you were starting from zero right now, right? Like, if you were everything that you know as a real estate investor, how would you, if you could reverse engineer, how would you build a portfolio these days? Like, what in your head is like the ideal way to build a portfolio these days? If you were to give your friends some advice or something like that, or people on the call, talk to our friends who are on the call.
Well, I mean, certainly go see JWB because they can help you. That's honestly, if you surround yourself with people who knows how to do it, and they have the insurance people, they have the finance people, they can help you formulate a plan and that sort of thing. I think that is obviously helpful. And we have referred like our nieces and nephew to JWB. I don't know if they followed through yet. We've tried to encourage them certainly to get into rentals earlier than we did. I always say, I wish we had done this sooner, not in the autumn period here of our lives, but I wish we had done it sooner. And I can't tell my nieces and nephews enough to get into real estate. And that's another thing, generational wealth that we would like to, we have no kids, but that's something that we hope to be able to pass on. And hopefully they will see the value of that. Even if they don't start right now, maybe they'll learn, but it's just basically, taking that step, the fear factor, and just doing it and surrounding yourself by knowledgeable people that can help you through it.
Jim, anything to add to that? Look, I wasn't framing you for a testimonial there, right? Like, I'm really am curious of like, if your strategy, right? Like, would it be all rentals? Would you do other things? Like, is it worth all the other stuff? Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think everything's diversification. We're kind of doing that right now, but yeah, I mean, looking back, I think, finding a turnkey opportunity like JWB, who's got the great management team in place, it just makes it all the easier to get into real estate. And that's what I'd always recommend. And like, so we're pushing our nieces and nephews toward it because it makes it such an easy process versus trying to go out and buy your own on your own and management. It's just tough.
And getting a bad taste in your mouth about it. If you can get the good taste in your mouth about it, then it's going to be easier to do.
But I like the single family home units. I mean, we're branched out a little bit different, but I do love that single family units.
And we wish JWB had a franchise in another big city.
I haven't looked into South Dakota yet.
It doesn't have to be South Dakota, but a tax-free state or a tax income state is a good one. Maybe a tax state.
Well, we're Jacksonville.
I know.
I hate to burst the bubble, but we're gonna be here. But thank you guys for saying those kind words. And I just wanted you to know that concept of helping people that are younger than us is a big driver for me too. Like within my family, within others, right? It's just simply, if you can kind of master that ability to understand debt, and you can buy properties that cash flow, they pay for themselves every single month, and you invest for a long time in a market that has shown to grow, it really creates an incredible path for you to have options like you guys have, right? And, when we get to do that now, after doing this for 10 years or so, like you have, and 15 years for me, right? I look back and I'm like, oh my goodness, I didn't start early enough. I say that, right? I started when I was 23, and I say I didn't start early enough. And it's just something that, I try to send books. I try to send Rich Dad, Poor Dad to other people in my family. I usually wait for them to have the conversation with me at this point, but early on in my career, I was banging down the door of every single family member I had. Let me tell you about what I've learned in rental property investing. And it's just because it's really powerful, especially if you can master that debt component as well. Oh man, it's that's how you can create generational wealth.
Love it, man. I'm glad that I get to be a part of this, because again, this has made me take action. Like if y'all didn't start soon enough, I started at 40, right? But I'm ready to start my journey. Jim and Staci, thank you so much. This was super educational. It's really interesting to see the experience that you have had, right? Like all the different touch points that you've had, how open you are with your story. I particularly love how adventurous you are, and how it's always great to talk to a couple that clearly likes each other. Right. So just putting that example out into the universe, I think is one that doesn't exist enough. So thank you so much for being here. I want to thank everybody that was with us today, right? We had over 50 people with us on the call. It's never goes unnoticed for us that you got to take an hour out of the middle of your day, and for 50 people to join is so gratifying for me, Gregg, for us to be able to show amazing people like Jim and Staci and talk about their story. If you want to get really into the nuts and bolts of rental property investing, our Thursday show, also at 12:30 Eastern, is where we do the JWB Rental Income Property of the Week.
Week.
where we really dive into, a spreadsheet that you get to analyze, and we get very, very tactical with it. So we invite you to join us. We invite you to join our Facebook group, jwbfacebookgroup.com, and join the over 2,000 people like Jim and Staci and Lee and Marilyn and Leo and everybody here that's in the chat. We'd love to have you hanging out with us. And in the meantime, and download that passive guide if you want some more info, jwbpassiveguide.com. But that's it. Those are the things I got to say. Jim and Staci, thank you so much. I'm going to leave it to Gregg for the last kind of words here.
Well, probably you just nailed it, brother. Jim and Staci, thank you so much for sharing the story. This was incredible. I just wanted to share with you that, starting off the company early on, I got to work with clients, and bring certain clients on, and you guys have always held a special place in my heart. I remember our first conversations, and getting to share this stage with you now, 5 years later, seeing the success that you've had with us, but beyond that is really, really fun. And, these types of relationships are what make me have the best job in the entire world. So I appreciate the opportunity to serve you guys and help you guys reach that financial freedom, whatever it is. If it's the Great American Loop or it's the Great American RV trip, whatever it is, I want postcards when you get there. And thank you guys. And we're looking forward to the Thursday show with the property of the week. I want to say a special thank you to all the clients that were on the call as well. Many clients have asked about updates for inventory on a more regular basis. And one of the things that we're doing is the Thursday show where we highlight a specific property of the week that many times is available, and we break it down live. So if you're a current client and you'd like to know more about the inventory that we have, would love for you to continue to be there on Thursdays as well. So we're excited to see you guys, and we'll catch you Thursday at 12:30, everybody. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.